Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing to spend your afternoon here with us. So, those who don't know, I'm Patricia Ogunfaber, and I do a podcast show to help people maximize property values. It is called Maximizing Property Values, and it's on all the popular platforms. It's on Apple, Spotify, Google, Audible, blah, blah, all of them. That, however, is a monologue. So it's just me talking about my experiences and giving people tips and trying to help people with what they are doing. And I have now added a guest series where I have a star who comes and talks to us about what they are doing. And it's all about trying to help people who don't have as much experience as perhaps, some people like me and Louise might have. And, people might just be able to take one thing or two things away from it. And just last week, we had Spencer, a young lad, but with his head just screwed on so right. So, you know, and again, these guest series, they are all bonus scenes on the Maximising Property Values podcast show. So you can click on the link above and you can just listen to, the podcasts on your favourite listening app. They're all there. But my guest today is Louise Reynolds. And Louise, we are going to look into your life a little bit before we go into property. And so Louise she's an amazing lady, very, very kind, and she is into property, but we will hear from her. So I won't do an intro, Louise, because I think you will be best doing your intro. But before we get to that, firstly, I'd like to say, Louise, welcome to Maximising Property Values. And before we go into your property activities, so listen to this, Louise. Please tell us of one thing in your life that you regret till today. So that's one. And then the second thing is something that still makes you beam. So those are two things, and they cannot be property related. I like putting people on the spot.
Oh, I just, when you were asking that question, Patricia, and also thank you very much for the warm welcome and the setting up. That's wonderful. And it's a delight to be here because I always love chatting to you and always find it very stimulating. I learn so much and I think you're a very kind lady, Patricia. So, your question, something that's a regret in life. So, I was going to say about property about not getting into it
You're not
sooner.
allowed.
I'm not allowed, but a life regret, I think, for me is it's a bit philosophical, is that I have spent too much of my life focusing on trying to plug my weaknesses rather than playing to my strengths. So I suppose it's a bit like the grass always seems greener on the other side, or whatever it is. But throughout, I've got a varied background. I've got a lot of business experience. I've spent time in line marketing and sales roles in the drinks industry and financial services, over decades worth of experience in management consultancy, and what I am trying to do now is be in flow. So actually trying to play more to my strengths so that what I do in life and my journey, I can't mention property, but it's all flowing a bit more naturally. I sometimes think that I have made life far too difficult for myself, particularly in business, because I suppose I've focused too much on what my negatives are rather than my positives and my strengths, and spent a lot of time trying to plug those and build them up, rather than and compensate for them, rather than building on my strengths, and appreciating them and playing to them more. I think I would have been a lot more successful had I done that. So what can I say? So I always thought I wanted to be more on the marketing side than the sales side, but in reality, I am probably better at doing business development and dealing with people. I love negotiating. I love doing deals. I'm quite risk averse, so I do check things out. So I've got some natural inclinations and some core strengths, and I just think I haven't played to those enough or built on those enough, and I've probably looked for jobs or done things where I am trying to plug gaps. I've probably gone for jobs and ended up being very frustrated and not being as successful, or it's taken a long while to get a job I've wanted, because I've been sort of barking up the wrong tree. I mean, in terms of on a personal front, I don't think I have. I'm very lucky in, I have found, my partner in, my best friend in life, my husband, and we've been together now 30 years. We have two wonderful children who are now grown up and finding their way in life. My son has just graduated from Portsmouth University and he's finding his way in life. And my daughter is at university, and so she's sort of going through that process. So um, I've been very lucky in my personal life. I've had quite a few glitches, quite a few glitches along the way, but I don't think I have any regrets. So sorry.
Oh, no, no, no. I was just literally just agreeing with you that, because that happens with everyone, doesn't it? If if we're going to be honest, nothing ever goes completely smoothly. It's a bit of up and down, a bit of up and down, and then you come out at the end and you say, yes, that was worth it, and yeah, it's all quite good. So and I'm loving what you're actually sharing with people, because there might be some younger people in the audience who might be thinking, oh, do you know, my life is not going according to plan. I want this and I want that, and it's not how, to me, and you're literally just underscoring that, is we always learn about ourselves through life. And sometimes it takes us a bit longer to actually get to where we need to be in terms of understanding ourselves and knowing exactly what we want to do and where we want to go. But it's never too late in life. So honestly, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, and I suppose the other thing in terms of regret is, perhaps being too proud at times. Um, I would consider myself a fairly well educated person. I've been to university, but I've that has held me back sometimes, because when I've got into my working life and all the rest of it, I felt there was so much more I should know, um, than I did, and I think that feeling quite proud and not wanting to feel ashamed by actually owning up to, well, I don't know this, and asking for help. So actually, that I'm probably giving you a number of regrets now, but actually not asking for help, not opening up a bit more, not sharing with others that I might not know everything. Kind of, I've had a bit of a facade at times in my life where I've hidden some of those things, and not wanted to open up. And I think that's kind of held me back a bit. So at times I think I've ended up being a slow learner because of holding myself back. And oh god, I was going to verge on to property there, but yeah. So just just that, Patricia. But you had another question, didn't you?
It was what something else that makes you beam, kind of like, still makes you beam. So like, something that just puts a massive smile on your face, and that's happened in the past, and it could have been something that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago, could have been 50 years ago, whenever, but whenever it crosses your mind, it puts a massive smile on your face.
Okay, so actually, this probably comes back a little bit to my point about wanting to be in flow a bit more, and actually the point that you made about if things don't always go on, go according to plan or stay on track, don't be put off by that. Um, it was actually, I mean, this is just top of mind. I'm sure there's plenty of others, but being put on the spot, the thing that springs to mind, apart from all the wonderful things in my personal life, having a wonderful family and husband, is a personal thing in that I don't normally win at competitions or auctions or any of those kind of things. And I entered it sounds small, but it meant an awful lot to me. It was a sort of a cycling competition. It was like on a fixed bike in a gym. And this was decades ago. It's got to be, I don't know, 25 years or so ago. And it wasn't long after we moved into our property, and there was a gym opposite our road. And we joined, my husband and I, and we were, going over there on a regular basis. And there was this competition. It was who can cycle cover, I can't remember what it was now, 5 kilometers in the quickest time. And there was this not quite a trial before, but they needed to assess people's fitness levels, and give everybody a sort of grading, so that it's a bit like golfing handicap, to make sure that everybody was on on an even keel. And so we all had these this grading, or this handicap, if you like. And I took part in this. I don't have a particularly great lung capacity, so I would have had possibly a high-ish handicap. But also, I had just recovered from flu, I think it was, and I was really not firing on all cylinders. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for this. Just going to go for it. I'm probably going to fall off the bike at the end of it. And there was a prize, which was a Muddy Fox bike, and I never had a Muddy Fox bike. I haven't really had any bike, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going all out for this. I quite like the idea of having a Muddy Fox bike. And I absolutely pushed myself to the limit. I almost threw up at the end of this stint, and the woman next to me couldn't believe that I'd beaten her, because I just said, I'm just recovering from the flu and all the rest of it. And I suspect she probably was a lot fitter than I was. But I was just so determined. I wanted to win this bike, and that I never win at anything. So that was it. I was going flat out, and I won this thing. And it still makes me feel elated now. Why does it make me feel elated now and put a big smile across my face? Well, for a start, I've still got the Muddy Fox bike, so it's very, very old now. And I see it every time I go out of the front door. But also, it was just, when things are going bad, you need that one little story, that one thing where you think, oh God, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And then you really, really give it your all. And sometimes it just works. So that was my story about what makes me beamy.
Wow, I love little things like that. And for people in the room, Louise didn't know that I was going to ask her those questions, and none of the guests actually know which questions I'm going to ask them. And the questions do change from guest to guest, so that we get to actually see the person behind that social media picture and persona. Great stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Louise. Now, when did you, so now let's start with property. When did you buy your first property? And can you just kind of like tell us a bit about it? Was it for you to live in? Was it for investment purposes? If it wasn't for investment purposes, when did you buy your first investment purposes? And what did that look like? What was your experience? Can you share with us?
Sure. Well, actually, my first property that I ever bought, I wanted to get on the property ladder quite early on, and because I'd been to university, I was in my early 20s, and I was living and working in London, and I really liked the idea of getting on the property ladder. And I probably did the wrong things, in that the only way that I could afford to buy in London was putting a number of things in place, and I ended up buying. There was a bit of a plan there, that I ended up buying a 3-bed duplex. So it's a first floor flat. It was just a house that had been converted into a ground floor flat and a first floor flat. And my idea was to live in it, and so that I wasn't paying rent anymore, and then to rent out 2 of the rooms. Now, I probably didn't buy in the best possible road, because it was a road near a railway track. So it was, the next road up would have, gone up in capital value a lot quicker than mine did. But it served a purpose. It got me on the property ladder. It it was pretty much self-funding, because the rental, in fact, I can't remember the exact numbers now, but I know it worked out well financially in terms of income and getting on the property ladder. What didn't work out quite so well was interest rates, which were very different to what they are now. I think it went up to about 15.4%. This is like late 80s. This was about 1987, 1986, 1987. So the flat that I bought was in Alexandra Palace, and at that stage it was not particularly well known part of London. It was great because you could walk to Wood Green tube station. It also had its own train station. For getting into London, it was easy and quick. We had Alexandra Palace there, but it wasn't. It was a bit of a rundown place. It wasn't a venue as it has become now. So the only way I could get on the property ladder was doing that. But I also used, and I don't know how many people know or are familiar with, the rent-a-room scheme. So when you're a landlord, well, not a landlord, when you're a live-in landlord, you can benefit from the rent-a-room scheme. So you get tax-free income, an allowance for tax-free income. And I'm trying to remember what the limit is. I mean, I think it's about seven. You might know, Patricia, but it's about £7,000 or something now. Then it was probably about half of that, but it made a big difference. So that was the only way that I could afford to get onto the property ladder. And I think I probably ended up in negative equity at the time because of the way that the market went. But at least, I had a bit of a padding there when the interest rates were so high because of the rental income from the other rooms. But yeah, so that I think is the property I didn't make as much money on as I thought I would. But I had a place to live. I got onto the property ladder. I had income. And I could live in London, which was it all worked fine. In terms of my first investment, that was back in 2007. And oddly enough, my first investment property was abroad. And I know that a lot of people are very, scared about buying abroad. There are a lot more risks associated with it, and there's lots of stories that do the rounds on property circuits about not buying abroad and scams and all the rest of it. But all of those stories that I listen to, I just think there's a big piece of the jigsaw that's been missing, and that's due diligence. And for some reason, even people who are investors in the UK, they don't always translate through their due diligence in another country in the same way that they do in the UK. And we probably ought to be doing a bit more because there's so much more to learn. So for me, it's worked out well. Due diligence is a bit of a hallmark of mine because I'm quite a risk averse investor. I do have to do a lot of, just checking things out to even get comfortable. And I check things out. And it also happened at the same time that I started my business, Property Venture, back in 2007. So I'm someone who kind of likes to put my money where my mouth is. So Property Venture I set up to help others invest in property, and I also wanted to put my money where my mouth was and do it myself, because at that time I was helping people buy in continental Europe more than in the UK. So I made our first investment property in Krakow in Poland, and it was set out to be a buy-to-let. Bought it on the property and the location, because it still is in an area where there's lots and lots of businesses. And in fact, over the years, what are we now? So that's like 14 years. We've always had a working professional in there. There was actually at one stage we did have 12 months we had students, which didn't work out in quite the same way, but we've had professional tenants there renting. It's worked well. It's on a different scale in a way to some of the the UK stuff, because the capital appreciation isn't quite as high. The rental income isn't as much. But then, I got on the property ladder there. I think it was about 57k. Bought a one bed, it's about 38 square meter flat. It was at that time at the end of a tram line. So yeah, there's a bit of a difference. So it, 7 minutes on the tram into the city centre. And since then, the tram line has been extended, so it's no longer at the end of the tram line. So there's much more suburban build that has made Krakow spread further out. So that, I mean, that's worked really well for us. But the point is that, you know, I checked it all out, and in fact, another dimension to mention about it was what is now called gaining airspace. So it was an old tenement building of about, I think it was 2 stories. It then got built up another 2 stories. So we got like a new build, all the benefits of new build, but on a character property. And I quite like, if I'm buying a flat or helping others buy a flat, I quite like smaller buildings, which are a bit more manageable, rather than sort of bigger buildings with, you know, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of units in. Just makes it a bit more intimate and a bit easier when you're coming to rent, because there's not lots and lots of units that need to be rented, potentially at the same.
Do you know, Louise, the number of times that I have said we are so similar. Okay, maybe not appearance wise, but in terms of, you know, our ethos, what we like, how we do things, it is just uncanny. Amazing, 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 amazing. And funnily, actually, you bought your first property in Alexandra Palace. My first buy was actually in Crouch End, just down the road. So a little bit more in common there. Amazing. So now this place in Poland, I'm just trying to think. So can you just walk us through the procedure, how you found it, why you looked there, if you had to raise money, how easy it was, if somebody wanted to do it now? I know that you're a buying agent and we will come to that. But if somebody, say, for instance, decided that they wanted to do it on their own, and by the way, people in the room, I am not advising that you do that. I always say to people, if you're going to do something for the first time, go and get somebody who is experienced doing what you want to do, and let them walk you through that transaction. And then if in the future you want to do another one, or, you know, subsequent ones, then you will be well prepared to do so. So I'm not saying go and buy it on your own, but Louise, just in case there is somebody here who thinks they're a super person and they can do it on their own, can you just walk us through the process that you actually went through, or that somebody might have to go through today? That would be really helpful.
Okay, so one of the things that I have done in property is bring some of the tools and techniques that I learned and developed, and models, if you like, in my business life and management consultancy into property. And I used a framework. This is quite high level, particularly when you're looking at a different geography or a different location or looking abroad. Um, and it's a mnemonic, and it's called S.T.E.P.L.E.D. So each of those letters
Sorry,
stands
step-led. Oh, right.
S.T.E.P.L.E.D. So each of those letters stands for something. So I will just quickly run through just an overview of what it is, and if anybody is interested, I mean, if they want to follow me or message me or whatever, you know, I can send them something on it if they're interested and don't want to end up taking notes, because I've got Linktree links and stuff. But anyway, so S.T.E.P.L.E.D. So each of those letters stand for something. So S is for the social side of things. The T is for you know, the technology or infrastructure, if you like. The E is for the economic situation. That can be at a country level or the local area. P is for political, and that works actually abroad as well as in the UK. You know, what's the political situation? Because, you know, whether you've got a Tory or a Green or a Labour-run council also has an influence, as well as being abroad. So, what I mean by that as well is, you know, a lot of continental European countries are open to foreign investors. But if you're investing in a country like Russia or China, you know, the political setup would be very different in terms of how welcoming they are of external investors. The L is for legal. It can also be, you know, what's the legal setup? What are the tenancy laws like? What's it like? What's the buying process? And in continental Europe, the buying process is very different to here. It's a notarized buying process, so the whole thing is pretty different. The E is for the environment. So, for example, if you are looking at buying a holiday let or investing in a holiday let, if you're buying in an area of outstanding national beauty, you can quite often command a premium than if you're not in one. So, in the environment is relevant in certain circumstances. And the D is for demographic. What's the population makeup of the populate, of that area or of that country? And if your chosen strategy is bungalow flips, you want to be making sure that there is sufficient stock in the area, one thing, but in terms of the profile of the local residents, is there an aging population? Is there a big cohort of people who, whatever age they might be, are going to want to live in a bungalow? So I use that as a framework to check everything out.
So,
But
Louise, before you carry on, just in case people are taking notes, can you just literally, just quickly, just run through them again? Just, one word for each of those letters, and then, carry on, so that in case they've missed any of them.
yeah, so S is for social, T is for technology, E is for economic, P is for political, L is for legal, E is for environment, D is for demographic.
Brilliant.
Oh, yeah, so I'll just carry on then on that bit about buying abroad. So, I mean, I just did a lot of checking out of the kind of services and people I would be working with. So, I found a bilingual lawyer, found a very good agent who is also bilingual. Checked out, what all of the kinds of things like the letting rules and regulations, what where the demand was going to be, all the normal kind of things that you would do in the UK, but with a big emphasis on the people side of things. Because one of the things that I say about distance investing, if you are investing or buying out of area, with the best will in the world, you're going to be a bit more reliant on people on the ground. If there's a problem that arises, or you need a bit of an insight or something being checked out, you need to have someone there who you trust, who can sort things out for you. And that side of due diligence, checking out the people, I think is one thing that a lot of people overlook, or they are potentially more trusting than it would be advisable to be. And particularly when you're dealing with stuff at distance, you know it's all very well having a letting agent who says, oh yes, this is our process for finding a tenant, and this is how we set up contracts and all the rest of it, this is how we manage the property, how many times we go and visit, and all the rest of it. But it's important to ask some of the tricky questions, like, how do you deal with things if there's a leak, or something that's um, isn't normal run of the mill but might actually happen, because you want to check that you're in safe hands. And that's, you mentioned, Patricia, about we have a similar approach to things. It's that kind of softer thing, making sure that the person you're dealing with has some empathy with how you work and how you want things done, so that you feel that you're in safe hands, so that if there's a problem that arises, you know that they've got your back and they can help. So I think that people side of things has been quite important in terms of what I've checked out as well.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Do you know the value that I am getting from you guests is just immense. It's just amazing. And to see you actually, to listen to you actually break that process down. Because you see, now when I do things, I just do things because I know what I'm doing. It's like I'm doing it instinctively. But by you breaking it down, it's just helping people know what things they need to be taking into account. And I have found that really, really useful. So I'm gonna steal your S.T.E.P.L.E.D, because it's there's no point in saying to somebody, yes, that because I can look at, say for instance, a flat or a house in a particular area, and I will know once I've crunched certain figures whether it's worth buying or not. But I've never really kind of like broken it down in my head in the way that you've done, which I think would be helpful for people who are a bit less experienced. So that is just so good. So in terms of, okay, so you say it's not really appreciated in value, capital wise. What about returns? Are you able to share with us what sort of returns you are making from your property in Poland?
Yeah, sure. No, it has gone up, Patricia, but it's not gone up in the same way that my investments in Surrey, where I'm based, has. But just on the point of S.T.E.P.L.E.D, yeah, I know. You know your stuff inside out, so you automatically and intuitively do that, and that's great. But an awful lot of it is also, I mean, you're very, very experienced. You know an awful lot of stuff, but you also know your area. And sometimes I think just having a framework or a checklist, if you're doing something slightly different, so say you decided to go and invest in a different area, Patricia, I don't know, Sussex, Hampshire, or whatever, that you might not be quite so familiar with as you are with London and where you invest. Sometimes it just helps bring a different perspective and a checklist where you just wouldn't need it because you're so intuitive when you're investing in London. So that's just the point there about the step-led mnemonic and checklist. Um,
Oh, Louise, do you know what? Before you go on, you've just actually reminded me of something which I thought I'd throw into the podcast, which I don't normally do because when I have guests, they are my stars, and they are the people talking. But you a few months ago, I was going to invest in Ramsgate. Now, after Brexit, Ramsgate was supposed to be the place where all the goods were going to. It was going to be the main port for ferry imports from Europe. So immediately I thought, boom, that's the place to go. That's the place to actually invest because there's going to be so much business and so much transport and everything. So the point that I'm trying to make to people is when you're doing your due diligence, don't just do it in the beginning, do it constantly, refresh it, do it maybe, like Louise said, if it's an area that you don't know, maybe, review it every month before you actually commit. Because what then happened was the maybe the local authority or the council decided they didn't have enough money to upgrade the port to what it needed to be in order to actually take the traffic that the government said would be coming to Ramsgate, and the whole project was actually abandoned. And fortunately I picked that up before I was able to, before I committed and left. So yeah, you're absolutely right. But I just wanted to add that people should really just refresh that, refresh their due diligence, refresh their research, refresh all the things that are making them go to a particular area, because if something changes, it could mean the difference between break even and loss.
Yeah, and that's a very important point actually about infrastructure, Patricia, because yes, I mean, as we've seen, if you invest solely based on some kind of infrastructure improvement, you could be left high and dry. So take, the recent announcement with HS2, the eastern leg has been dropped. If you look at the Freeport status conferred on a number of cities across the UK by Rishi Sunak in the budget, it's a moot point about whether it's actually going to be effective or work. And again, with buying abroad, if you're buying where there's only one way of access, say if you're buying a holiday home, if you want to go out there regularly, if you're buying in an area that's quite touristic rather than year round, and there's only one airport that you can get access to it. If airline routes are disrupted in any shape or form, then again it does put you in a vulnerable position. So it is a question of thinking through all of that infrastructure, transportation, and having a number of options, not being over reliant on one thing. Yeah, no. So in Krakow, I bought, as I say, I think it was about 58k. It's one bed property, and it's probably worth maybe about 90k now. So it has gone up over that time, but not as much in terms of capital growth that I've experienced. For example, I've got a rental property in Surrey, and that's doubled in value in 10 years. So, the capital appreciation is not quite comparable. I mean, it's been fine. We've made money on it. We've had regular income coming in because we've had regular tenants, because we bought in an area where there were a number of multinational firms, and they've got workers, they've got contract workers. So that side of things has played out. That was the intention, was to have regular tenants in on long-standing contracts. And interestingly, I think it's partly to do with the fact that it's a one-bed flat. It's near, a business. It's in a nice area. It was an up-and-coming area, which has been a bit more gentrified as there's been more building work going on out further in the suburbs. So it had, I bought on the basis that it wasn't that great when we bought in it, but it was meant to be up and coming, and that has happened. But we also knew there was demand, because the here and now at that time was that there were businesses there, international businesses employing workers not only in Poland but across Central Europe. So we've had a Czech tenant, we've had Romanians, we've had Polish, and it's all, and that's all worked out. So we've had ongoing. The only blip was when we did depart from our professional tenants, and we did have legal students in, and they weren't, that wasn't a great experience. I know that some people in here are investors and they just dedicate themselves to student, and that's fine. But for us, in our flat, I think we ended up with two or three of them living in the property, and they shouldn't have been, and we had complaints from neighbours and all the rest of it. But in the end, I worked with the agents, and we sorted the stuff out. But this is where it comes back to, when you've got a problem, you want to make sure you've got someone decent at the other end of the phone, or the other end of Tinternet, to help sort things out for you. So yes, there's been some.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, Tinternet. Yes. Yeah, we are, I think, 6% yield, 6% gross yield, which I know for some people isn't fantastic. Those of you who are doing serviced accommodation or HMOs or holiday lets or whatever, but that is fine. I've invested for the long term. My whole journey into property has been about building up long-term wealth, building up a retirement pension pot. So I haven't been investing for to generate income here and now. It's not income that I've needed. I've been doing other things as well, which has been generating income. But so for me, my strategy is long-term investment. Buy to lets, because that's just where I'm at in terms of my risk profile, in terms of hassle factor. Decent yield, excuse me, decent yields and capital growth. So I'm looking at total return rather than just cash flow. Has to make sense from a cash flow point of view, in that there's a surplus, and and it is cash flowing. But I couple that with capital growth, and I look at the total return. And so Krakow has worked in that respect, as have my my others as well. So
Oh, great stuff. Now, people in the room, you would have seen that I've pinned a link to Louise's link tree. And if you tap on that, you will be able to see that she offers a 30-minute due diligence health check stroke other meeting. If you're looking to do any long distance investing, I really would recommend that you speak to Louise. She also does a free expert expat and property investor guide, which you can download from her link tree. And I pinned earlier her website, Property Ventures. Now, Louise's link tree is on her Instagram, which you can get to. Let me go to your Insta. If you, in fact, just go to okay, it's Louise.A.Reynolds. But if you go to Instagram and you just search for Louise Reynolds, you will get to her Insta, and then you'll be able to get to her link tree. Absolutely amazing. I love that you do that. And Louise, you are also a buying agent, aren't you? So, for people in the room, I introduced earlier that I do the podcast series maximizing property values, which I will pin towards the end of this particular session. And in there, normally it's a monologue. It's just me talking about the different areas that I'm talking about. And in episodes 11 to 13, so 3 episodes, 11, 12, and 13, I spoke about how people can maybe start a property business with not very much money. And the third of these was in episode 13, where I was talking about being a buying agent. Because do you know what, people? If you are, now, Louise combines this with other areas that she does. And in fact, episode 12 was about sourcing agents, which in fact I am now going into, because I'm always finding stuff that I can't take up myself, because right now I'm buying 4 properties at the same time, and it's causing me immense hassle. I can't buy everything that I see that is great, so I also source. So by saying that people can start a property business without very much money, I am not denigrating anyone, and I'm not saying that people can't afford to buy their own properties. I'm just saying it's a no-brainer. If you can help people and get paid for your expertise, it's another income stream that you can add to your situation. And I always actually say to my mentees, don't just look to buy properties to let out or to flip. Also look to add these extra income streams to what you're doing. Either become a sourcing agent, or a buying agent, or something like that. And Louise is a buying agent, so Louise, please talk to us about being a buying agent.
Will do. Thanks, Patricia. And just before I come on to that, thanks very much for sharing my link. My downloadable guide, I'm actually revamping for 2022. Not quite as we speak, because I wouldn't want to multitask during your your podcast interview here, Patricia. But so that will be up, and I have revamped it to include a lot of my distance due diligence tips, techniques, and all the rest of it. So it will be called 7 Steps to De-risking. So it will be an expat and investor guide, 7 steps to de-risking property investment. So by all means, download the one that's there now, and then there'll be a new one for 2022 with a lot more of my due diligence tools and techniques built in. So have one of each, and it's very easily downloadable from my website. And I do send out regular mailers with tips and all the rest of it. I'm not a spammy person. It's very much an opt-in session. So again, that's what I do. So yeah, buying agent. So if you like, so technically a buying agent is someone who is retained by a buyer or an investor to secure or to find a property on their behalf, and it's a term that's used more in lifestyle purchases. So you'll have like the Kirsty and Phil of this world, home buying, so more lifestyle purchases, and it's in that world that people would recognise that terminology better. Whereas here in the investor world, sourcing is much more of a recognised term. So to translate or to bridge that gap, I would say it's a personalised sourcing service. So I don't. I'm not process driven or product driven, as in, I've got a deal, and I've developed a whole load of systems for offloading deals on people, and that's a very different place from you as well, Patricia. It sounds like if you've got a deal that you can't do anything with or progress with because you're chock a block, you've got a tight knit network or community who you would pass that on to, and that's kind of the ethos of what I do. It's starting with the investor first. So, for example, if an expat comes to me and says, look, and this worked particularly well during COVID, expats, whether they're based in Dubai or Europe or Indonesia or Hong Kong, wherever it might be, Singapore, can't get here to do the investing, I have taken a brief from them. I've been retained by them. There's a retainer fee. The balance of my fees are due once I've successfully found the property for them. But so I would then work with them to work up a brief, what the criteria is, what it is they want, and then go out and find that property, which they then buy, and I'm there offering the support, guidance, and all the way through. And that works really well for distance investors who can't be here, who are busy with their day jobs. They're in a professional career and don't have the time or potentially the expertise to do that. So I've helped, or maybe someone's just even lacking the confidence to get started. So that's the role that I play. But I mean, I also help out of area investors, or just people who are busy in the southeast, because I'm based in Surrey, and I can offer that service around the home counties. So if someone's a busy professional and wants to build up and property portfolio, or buy a property, and they haven't got the time or the know-how, then that's something I can help with. And you tend to get a lot of investors who are wanting to get onto the property ladder, who are based in the southeast, who can't afford, or don't they in their mind think they can't get onto the property ladder in the southeast, and then they invest up north. This is sort of almost the reverse of that. And for me, a way of getting on the property ladder in the expensive southeast is, as you say, Patricia, by adding value. I mean, that's what I've just done recently. I bought a rundown property in Surrey, so I'm developing it. I'm just waiting planning permission. I've basically got to gut the property, start again, redo the whole layout, but also build on it, build an extension. And so I negotiated and got it at a decent price. I'm going to have to spend a decent whack of money on it, but it also means that the value should be there. So it's always keeping an eye on adding the value. But by getting in at a cheaper price, having negotiated on a property that's run down, you reduce your stamp duty, land tax up front. So you reduce a lot of those costs, and you're building in value. Sorry, and just on that, and actually adding value doesn't have to be buying and renovating or developing all at the outset. I mean, that's obviously an option, and you get the chance to retrofit and do some of these sort of whizzy green things to it. Another way is a slow-mo reno, because I've got an experience of doing that. I mean, another property that I bought, I could see the potential, great location. It was very shabby, run down. Again, I got a great price on it, and I've done a slow mo. So I set out with a plan to make it livable and decent, and charge a commensurate market rent, or in fact, it was below the market rent, because I did some stuff to it, and then with a view to doing bits and pieces, improving, and then lifting, or gradually lifting up the rent, so that it was reflective more of a market rent, and the condition of the property. So there are a couple of ways of doing it: slow mo, or all in one, fail swoop, a big bang approach. Either can work. And again, there I've pushed up and got decent yield on that, and got the capital growth. So does that explain buying agent? What?
Oh, yes, it does. I liked how you actually described it earlier, which is it's personalized sourcing, and that really is what it is. They are two flips, you know, two sides of the same coin. And yeah, it, you know, I never understand when people say, oh, I can't find this, or I can't find that, or I can't do anything, because there are people out there who can help you, and people out there who will help you. Um, so people, open up your eyes, and if you need help, go get it, and if you can help, offer it, because the property is so vast. We don't have to only make money by owning and renting out, or owning and flipping. We can also make decent money by being an agent of some sort, either a buying agent or a sourcing agent. And okay, fine, we have to work hard, and I spend hours like on the internet, but that's fine. I love what I'm doing. If you love property and you're passionate about property, honestly, consider these two routes, especially if you think you don't have enough money to buy your own, because you can still make money from property. So, yeah, thank you, Louise.
Yeah, can I just add in one other thing there, Patricia, about what you're saying about people not thinking they can find deals and all the rest of it. Yeah, I mean, with this property that I'm developing, I don't know whether I was fortunate or whether or what it was, but I, like you, did lots and lots of research looking at properties, and I had a very clear idea of what it was that I was looking for. And I only went to look at two properties. One I went to have a look at, and it was so run down. I just thought it has got problems crawling out of the woodwork that I can't possibly cost for or anticipate. So it looks as though it's going to be a bottomless pit. And then this one that I got, which was the only one that I offered on, and which wasn't accepted to begin with. So there was a bit of haggling and negotiation to and fro going on. Um, but there's something sometimes just about identifying. It's a problem property, but identifying the right problems that you think you can solve and add value to, but also to do with timing. I sensed that everybody was getting a bit frazzled with this transaction, and that I could see that I could help there. So sometimes it's a question of clarifying what the problem is that needs to be solved, and is it one that you are adept at solving, or secondly, is it just a question of timing? Everyone's just getting desperate, or as Patricia says, if you are not comfortable with identifying those opportunities, then there's plenty of help out there.
Definitely, Louise. Oh, that is, I honestly just have to thank you guys who come onto this guest series and you just educate us, because I've learned from you, in this hour that we've been talking, and not only about property things, S.T.E.P.L.E.D, for instance. I just like that acronym. I just absolutely love it. It's not something that I'm going to forget that easily. So really good, excellent. Um, Now so people in the room, if you want to listen back on this, it's going to be on Clubhouse. It will be under my profile and it will be under Louise's profile. But if you want to listen to it, you know, on your favorite podcast listening app, if you kind of bookmark Maximizing Property Values, it will be published next week, Wednesday. So on Wednesday, it will be published. Usually it goes on at 1 a.m. So if you wake up on Wednesday, you will be able to download it as a podcast. So two things, and it will be there for you. Now, what I would like to say is, Louise, unless you've got any closing kind of like remarks or advice for us, I honestly want to thank you. But let me come back to you. Have you got any closing words of wisdom for us? Anything that you'd like to, advise people who are listening to this?
I think just take a pragmatic approach to property investing and to life, really. I do think that people come a cropper when they're chasing the dream, the get rich quick dream. Um, there's always a certain amount of effort that has to go in, and insight and knowledge and all the rest of it. And sometimes you can look at someone who makes it look easy, like you, Patricia. You're very experienced to make things look very easy. But there's there's a wealth. Just everyone. We're all adept at doing something. So someone doing something will look easy to someone else that doesn't know how to do that. But behind that is an awful lot of experience, an awful lot of education, an awful lot of grind, and effort. So I would just say, be pragmatic about it. That follow dreams, but also put the effort in. Things aren't, well. There's effort and research and insight and knowledge that does go into making things work in the property world. And don't get too seduced by but by promises of everything being really easy. I think that's probably
Do you know, you are so true. And, you know, we can make money. Do you know, let me just have a quick look in the room. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they'd been given incorrect advice. And I said to the person, I said, well, look, it may be that nothing will come of it if you do what you're talking about. I said, but, you know, for me, I would not do that because, you know, when I'm building my business, I want it to be on firm foundations. I want it to be done on the right side of the law. I don't want to be breaking any laws in running my business. So, and I think that again was a little bit of, you know, everyone's talking about being a property millionaire, and I would like a bit of that too. Thank you. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you very much for those words of wisdom. So for people in the room, thank you so much for joining myself and Louise today on this Maximising Property Values guest series show. Like I say, her podcast will be released on Wednesday week, and next week I've got Rosita McGowan. So if you're into tax and you maybe want to learn a bit more about how tax kind of like fits in with property, be here next week and come and learn. So it's on a Wednesday. The guest series are always on a Wednesday at 12 noon. And Louise, thank you so much. And, you know, for people who might be listening to the podcast, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please do review it. Review it. Let us just know what you think of it. You know, rate it, because that would be really, really good to get your feedback. And so thank you very much. And have a lovely day, everyone. And see you next week, Wednesday, for my next guest. Do take care.